All right, hey everybody, it's Michael,
And Nick?
and this is our fourth episode of the Codex Comics podcast. So today, pretty good week for Marvel and DC. Big thing from DC that we're going to start jumping in and talking about: Batman: The Red Death. This is the first issue of the Dark Knights, the evil Batman tie-ins. As we saw in Metal issue number 2, Batman disappeared into the Dark Multiverse, and his uh, nightmare versions of Batman entered the Earth Zero, and they're going to try and take it over alongside their leader, the Batman Who Laughs. So today we got a glimpse at Batman the Red Death, his origin story, and I'm going to throw it over to Nick to just talk about the issue some.
Alright, so Batman has this fear. Basically, he doesn't want to lose any more people. You can see that Batman lost the Bat family, and basically he goes after Flash, trying to take his speed because Batman is afraid of losing everything that he has tried to save in his career. At this point, he does catch Flash, and basically, after fighting him with this confrontation, he ties him to this cosmic bat treadmill thing. And then he takes him into the Speed Force, and you can see this epic panel of Flash and Batman disintegrating and basically merging into this Red Death. Um, and then the rest of the issue goes on to basically then he zooms around and saves everything, but unfortunately, he can see something coming and destroying this world because of what he did. The Then the Joker Batman shows up and he recruits the Red Death to basically join him in conquering new New Earth, which is Earth Zero. But I do want to touch on what the Joker said. Basically, he's like, it takes one bad day to destroy someone's life, and it takes a week to destroy the multiverse. Can you touch base on this, Mike, a little bit?
Well, yeah, so the reference to it takes one bad day, that's in reference to the Killing Joke, one of the greatest Batman graphic novels of all time. Um, in which the Joker paralyzes Barbara Gordon. And that's a line from that where it hints that it took one bad day for Joker to turn into the Joker. He uses that line in this issue, which is really ominous, and I'm curious to see where that goes. And about the week, the idea that a bad week to destroy a multiverse. I'm guessing that's hinting at the number of the evil Batman. I'm sure that's going to tie into that, and I'm going to talk about the issue real quick. So some really interesting stuff in the issue was that Barry is still connected to Bruce through the Speed Force as the Red Death. So Barry's going to have to watch Batman hurt the Flash family on Earth Zero, which is going to make for some really interesting crossovers. And I think my favorite part about this issue and what makes me excited for the rest of the tie-ins is that these aren't just, oh, here's this new character who's this villain for this arc who doesn't matter. Like, they've given us a really in-depth, emotional story about this character. I don't think we'll ever see these characters again, probably after the end of Metal. I'd love to see more of these characters. I think they're awesome so far. I mean, we haven't seen any other ones except for the Red Death yet, but just he's a really in-depth character. He's three-dimensional, and I'm excited to see where this goes for the rest of Metal, for the rest of the Nightmare Batman tie-ins, and the Flash crossover, the Justice League, all that kind of stuff. I'm excited to see where that goes. So Nick, anything else on that?
Going back to Mike, do you think that eventually Barry Allen will take control of the Red Death from Bruce Wayne?
Yeah, so I think that's gonna ultimately be the story of this, and like how the Red Death gets beat. I feel like that's how this story is gonna go. I mean, just that's how stories are told. I think he is gonna take over and regain himself back. Whether whether Bruce then plays the part that Barry has, like in the back of his mind. I'm interested to see where that goes. But like I said, I don't see these characters being used past this. So, I mean, that'd be a good way to end this character's story. So next, let's jump into some Marvel stuff. Star Wars Annual came out, and Venomverse issue 3 came out this week. So let's head over to Nick to talk about that.
All right. So I'll start with Star Wars. Star Wars Annual 3 is basically a story of Han Solo and Princess Leia trapped on this planet of ice trying to escape these mercenaries. They do eventually escape the mercenaries. The story basically builds up their relationship to eventually what we see in Empire Strikes Back. Nothing really more can be said about this. It's just more a filler story, honestly. I'll talk about Venomverse here a little bit. Basically, Venom and the remaining symbiotes battle the poisons, and basically what happens here is an interesting twist. Venom frees Carnage from this other dimension, and basically Carnage goes nuts and starts taking out the heroes. But you can see Venom and Carnage basically trying to become a team, which is interesting. And also, Doctor Strange is kidnapped, and Doctor Doom has plans for him for some strange reason. Basically, that's pretty much all that happens in here. I think something is going to happen to Doctor Strange. The issue kind of ends where you're left with a question basically saying what's going to happen here. We'll have to see what happens next week. I'll bounce it back to Mike as he talks about Superman.
Yeah, so another issue of Superman came out this week, issue 31. And it's interesting because it's a Lois Lane story. It's about Lois Lane on a case for her to write a story. And I think it's exciting to see. I think that's what's so great about this Superman title is we're seeing Action Comics is about Superman fighting evil. And Superman is about Superman's family with John and Lois. And seeing a story about Lois is something that fans have wanted for a really long time. Seeing just like an action story about Lois Lane, because she's not afraid to get herself into trouble, which is kind of, I mean, she knows that no matter what happens to her, Superman's going to save her. So, I mean, but yeah, I mean, it's fun to see the different aspects of Superman's life, and it doesn't have to be a Superman story. I mean, there's a great cast of characters for Superman, and Lois is one of those characters. So seeing her take on a case, especially against Deathstroke, and hopefully seeing Superman confront Deathstroke, I think is going to be really, really fun. So I think Deathstroke could pretty much go toe to toe with Superman. I mean, minus the fact that Deathstroke doesn't have superpowers, but I think Deathstroke can put up a pretty good fight against Superman, and it's funny that I say that because I don't think that Batman stands a chance against Superman. So Nick, any thoughts on this at all?
Well, I kind of like the idea of them not focusing on Superman all the time and giving the other secondary characters and main characters um, more focus. This is definitely going to be interesting with Lois Lane. We'll just see what happens. Honestly, I mean, who knows? We'll see what happens.
All right, so the next part of the Justice League story, Legacy, also came out this week. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, the kids basically planned action by fighting Wonder Woman, but actually, the future Aquaman shows up, and it's just funny because a couple issues before he breaks into the Batcave and steals a bunch of equipment needed to fight the Justice League. The first couple pages opens up where Aquaman shows up and he fights Superman with kryptonite. He uses then solar, he uses red solar power to basically depower him, and he kidnaps him basically. And then you can see him fighting Barry and Jessica in the next couple pages. But this story basically gives us the idea that there's something more going on here, and it's kind of mysterious in a sense. Um, but it basically the issue ends where Simon releases the darkness which he's been holding all these issues, and basically we see Wonder Woman's now infected with this said darkness. Um, in all reality, I'm kind of curious what's going to happen next. Any thoughts on this, Mike?
Yeah, so this Legacy story, I think it's been one of the strongest Rebirth Justice League titles so far. And it's fun to see like the Justice League kids. I mean, granted, I'd rather see John than this other guy, but that's just because I'm again biased. But I think it's fun to see these kids going up against the Justice League, and I'm excited to see where this story goes. I truly believe that Hitch, with all his arcs so far in the Justice League title, I really feel like he's building to something, some grander plan that all these stories are going to have fit into, especially with all the time traveling stuff and everything like that. I really think that either at the end of Legacy, since this is his last Justice League arc for Rebirth for right now, I wonder if the end of Legacy is going to be the culmination of all that's happened so far in Justice League.
So now we're going to bounce to this new Marvel Legacies that's coming out. Issue 1 comes out next week. What do you want to see happen in this issue?
All right, so I kind of jumped off Marvel for a while, and kind of picked up DC recently, if you couldn't tell. But I'm really excited for Marvel Legacy. I think this will be a good way for Marvel to return to form. And again, I hate to compare it to Rebirth, but Marvel is definitely taking a page out of DC's book with the whole Rebirth thing. I mean, just the idea of these stories sounds way too similar, and the fact that for Rebirth, every character had their like special one shot, which is really similar to this Generations thing. So Marvel's definitely taken a page out of DC's Rebirth book, and I think that's a really good thing. I think this is what Marvel needs. Marvel needs to go back to their legacy, back to what made Marvel the superior comic book company all through the 1900s, like through like the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. Um, Marvel just needs to go back to what made them great, and I think that Legacy can do that. I think Legacy can give us a good mix of here's your classic characters that everybody grew up with and loves, but here's new characters to fall in love with again. Um, and I don't really know where Legacy is going to go. I don't know how much it's going to build off of Secret Empire or be its own thing. Um, but I'm curious to see what their overarching story with Legacy is going to be. Nick, you follow Marvel more closely than I do. How do you think this is going to tie into the big picture?
Well, like Mike said before, I think Marvel is trying to go back to their roots with all their classic characters and stuff. Um, I I honestly don't know what they're trying to do. I mean, they are doing a more of a rebirth approach with all their titles and stuff. I do want to see what's going to happen to all these characters, and maybe we'll get a couple of new characters out of it, or maybe even we get some old characters returning. Um, Mike, is there any characters that you want to see back in this season?
Well, I mean, I want to see. I mean, because last I checked, Tony Stark's still dead, right? And is it Riri Williams? She's been Ironheart, and I'm excited to see. I mean, Tony Stark's gonna come back more than likely, and we're gonna see him as Iron Man again. I'm excited for that. Um, I'm excited for return to form of Peter Parker. With this Fall of Parker storyline that's going on, he's supposed to be losing Parker Industries and going back to the Spider-Man that we all know and love. And there's always this argument that people have that Peter Parker can't be a kid forever and all this stuff. But with Doc Ock having earned the doctorate and the company in Peter Parker's place being Peter, it takes away from that character and it weakens who that character is because Peter Parker is one of the smartest characters in the Marvel universe. Um, so I'm excited to see Peter Parker return to form, and Miles Morales is a big hit for Marvel. So I'm excited to see those two characters together, kind of in a Flash, Kid Flash type of mentality. I think that'll be fun to see. I don't think they're ever going to be like Batman and Robin level of sidekicks or anything like that. But I'm excited to see, the occasional crossover with those characters. Um, and so, Nick, I mean, any characters that you want to see come back?
Oh man. There's one character I kind of want to see come back. Um, uh, remember Jessica Drew's Spider Woman? They made her into a more mother figure, but back in the day, she used to be this top spy and for Hydra and Shield and Sword. I would love to see her come back as what she used to be, but I honestly don't know what's going to happen. Um, I don't really know of any characters off the top of my head, honestly. We have Eddie Brock Venom back. I do want to see Tony Stark back. It would be awesome if, I don't know, it would be awesome to see Captain Marvel, Danvers Captain Marvel, take a more, like, not so leadership approach, but I don't know. We'll see what happens, honestly.
All right, so yeah, we'll get Marvel Legacy next week, the one shot mini issue, and so we'll have more answers then. And I'm excited to see where Legacy goes. So now we're going to get into some other stuff that came out this week. Nick, if you want to lead that.
All right, so some of the other titles that came out this week, we have Aquaman 31, we have Green Lanterns 31, um, Venom also came out this week. You have a new crossover Wonder Woman Conan, which is kind of interesting, I think. Um, you have X-Men Gold number 12. You have Star Wars Captain Phasma number 2, which ties in somewhat to the movie coming out in December. You have Nightwing 29, which is basically a tie-in to Dark Knight's Metal. Also, you have some of the independent titles this week. You have Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire. And any other titles you want to add?
No, not really. I mean, Nightwing's a big deal with this whole metal thing happening. Captain Phasma is also really important, like you said, because it ties into the Last Jedi. Really great read. Just seeing and kind of, I guess, redeeming Captain Phasma from what we expected her in the Force Awakens. We didn't really get, and I think with the Phasma series, comic series out right now, and the Phasma origin novel that just came out, really adds a lot to that character. I like DC doing this whole crossover with Dark Horse and everything. I mean, we've had a lot of this recently. I mean, they're doing with IDW, Batman and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like sequel series again. So that's gonna be exciting. It doesn't come out today, but it's coming out soon. I just like to see these companies doing these crossovers like this. So now we're gonna jump into our picks of the week. I'll start this. So my pick for this week is Super Sons. Super Sons number issue 8 came out this week, which I believe is the third part of the Planet of the Capes arc. And let me tell you, I say it all the time. Super Sons is my favorite read so far in Rebirth. I mean, it's just so good, and the writing is so pure. I mean, just some of the remarks that Damien makes to John and everything. There's one line in the issue where Damien's explaining to John that they're in this alternate dimension, and he was saying it's kind of like the dinosaur island that John was on in with Superman in the Superman series at the beginning of Rebirth. And Damien's like, yeah, in these alternate dimensions, there are no rules. Those are my favorite kind. And it's just fun to see this really arrogant Damien, because half the time when John and Damien get into problems, it's Damien's fault because he's too arrogant and he gets in over his head. And it's just a really great read, great artwork, great dialogue. It feels like these two characters are building this relationship together. So my trade pick for the week, not really a trade, it's just a graphic novel. I talked about it earlier, The Killing Joke. With the references in Batman the Red Death, the references it made to One Bad Day from the Killing Joke trade or graphic novel, it's just the Killing Joke is one of the greatest Batman stories ever. It can be read in canon or out of canon. It's a really great read. Seeing what happens with Barbara and Jim, and just seeing this conflict between Batman and the Joker. So now on to Nick for his picks.
All right, so before I get to my picks of the week, I have to say that this week Venomized covers came out, and what these covers are, basically you have villains of the Marvel Universe completely turned into Venom spawn in a sense. Um, so with that in mind, my pick of the week has to go to Jean Grey because the Venomized cover of Jean Grey is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, you have Dark Phoenix, and then you put a Venom spawn on her. It just is really really cool. Some of the other covers this week that came out where you had Loki as Venom, you had Aunt May as Venom, and I think there was a Doctor Doom as Venom in there somewhere, but I'm not 100% sure. Um, Also, for my trade pick this week, I have to pick Forever Evil because this book ties so closely with Lex Luthor at this point, trying to be a hero. Um, it's also going to tie in a little bit to the Doomsday Clock because this was the moment that Lex Luthor decided to become a hero and basically change his ways. Um, I want to see what's going to happen to him eventually in this Doomsday Clock when Ozymandias basically it to my speculation, I think Ozymandias is basically going to tell Lex Luthor that he has to be a necessary evil, and I want to see how Lex Luthor takes that quote. I'll go back to Mike as we get into our special events.
All right, so there's a lot of special events coming up, but a really important one is happening on Saturday. This Saturday is Batman Day, which this year was taken over by Harley since it's her 25th anniversary this year. 25th anniversary this year. That'll be this Saturday, September 23rd. There will be just a lot of Batman stuff, free comic book for stopping in that day. Also, Potato Fest will be the next weekend, Saturday, September 30th. Mount Aloysius is doing a charity con, which is Saturday, October 21st. And then Halloween Comic Fest is going to be Saturday, October 28th. So thanks for tuning in again this week. We'll see you all again next week, which is a really big week. Previews guide. We're going to look ahead into the future of what's happening in comic books. So we'll see you then. Thanks for listening.